The planet of fortune and abundance temporarily glides into Pisces mid-month through end of July, where it will retrograde back into Aquarius. This 3-month foray will give us a taste of next year's full Jupiter in Pisces transit. Jupiter in the sign of universal consciousness is most definitely a spiritual energy, and we may be more capable of connecting to the divine within and without. Whereas with Aquarius, the growth may be in political advances, with Pisces, we are looking at an increase in emotional and spiritual intelligence. Despite Christmas being associated with the birth of Jesus, the birthday of the actual man was in March, in the sign of Pisces. The symbolism of Jesus is purely Piscean: care for the disenfranchised, universal love, understanding, and alleviation of suffering. This tragically includes the dark side of Pisces, which is martyrdom and victimhood. The Pisces archetype compels one to connect to something or someone larger than oneself, and oftentimes the beloved is a muse or romantic ideal. The real-life inspiration is perhaps unknowingly simply a cipher for the divine. The starving artist may sacrifice much for the attainment of his or her vision. Alternatively, those drawn to a social or political cause must also endure long periods of failure or limited success before arriving at their goal. We are all called upon to consider our highest values now and what is worth sacrificing for. And as we have recently celebrated Earth Day, I have just the place to start: surrendering some of our excessive consumption in service to a more healthy environment. If we want a more livable planet, we in the first world are going to have to sacrifice some of what we have in order for the poorest to have their most basic needs met. Studies have shown that, barring location, most Americans are quite satisfied living with an average annual income of $105,000. Those making more are not markedly happier, and in fact, we could posit that those with the most accumulated wealth suffer from a hoarding syndrome, now an actually recognized condition in the DSM-4. And sadly, we are all familiar with the oft-repeated statistic that here in the United States, 40% of households do not have money to cover a $400 emergency. Well, now we are at emergency levels on planet Earth. She cannot sustain endless growth on a rock with finite resources. This is why money markets are now focusing on intangible or virtual assets like human futures, behavioral indices, biometrics, and the like, as well as continued forms of disaster capitalism. Without finding our spiritual centers and facing a mature reckoning of our existential dilemma, we are doomed. Fortunately, Jupiter in Pisces can bring us into greater contact with cosmic and healing forces. For artists and musicians, poets and dancers, this moment can ignite more creative inspiration. Romance, more of a giving rather than egoic experience, is highlighted as well as the potential for slipping into addictive tendencies. How can we each discover the divine within, the sense of common good? Where can we surrender attachments that are no longer serving us? For Aries, by diving deeply into your meditative practice, dream work, or transmutation of sorrow and suffering. For Taurus, aligning with organizations that assist the disadvantaged. For Gemini, using your creative talents to bring light to global issues involving water or the environment. For Cancer, expanding your spiritual practice, religious views to encompass a global rather than personal perspective. For Leo, connecting with like-minded individuals creatively or financially. For Virgo, letting go of control or judgment in relationships, both personal and professional. For Libra, being willing to overgive your time and energy when necessary. There is no need for exact reciprocation. For Scorpio, focusing on your children, developing your intuitive perceptions. For Sagittarius, acting in a more empathetic manner toward family members, particularly your maternal figure. For Capricorn, allowing more creative fluency and metaphors in your communications. For Aquarius, surrendering your analytical skills for those that are more humane and humanitarian in nature. And for Pisces, allowing yourself to express your inner sensitivity without fear. The world needs your compassionate spirit more than ever. To reiterate, with Jupiter in Pisces, we might consider the higher form of suffering and sacrifice for a common good. If we dream of world peace and universal love, there is no better time than this moment to bring these ideals into fruition. I'm Metastrologer Patrice Kamins.